So welcome back to Real Talk with Joy. This is another episode, recording live from Atlanta, Georgia. I am your host, Joy Mbong, and we're back in the studio again here from Atlanta, Georgia, with an international publicist, no one else than Honorable Alex Obi-Oshiwola. And today's topic is going to be on the new frontier for Nigeria and Africa as a whole. Mr. Oshiwola, thank you very much for continuing this interview with us here in Real Talk with Joy. Now, I know you've really addressed a lot of tremendous questions in the first portion of it, and now moving forward, would like to know, do you believe that there should be some initiatives or plans for the Nigerian youths to embrace and succeed in politics, and how does one unlock great potentials through education in Nigeria or other sectors?
Well, if you look around the trend happening around the world, look at the trend happening around the world right now, the youth are coming into government. You understand? We only have problem in Nigeria. If you look at the setting, the old boys are still there.
Very true.
And they are not letting the youth have the breathing space.
They've grandfathered.
Even if when the youth make effort to come in, they become what you can call godfathers.
Yes.
They dictate what you do over there. Nothing wrong with a godfather, but is it in what sense is it? Is it for positive or for negative? That's what you're going to ask yourself. Everybody have a political mentor. I had a political mentor, A.A. Maikori, Adamaudu Maikori, like I mentioned earlier, from Kaduna State, who was actually the man who introduced me to politics without knowing it. Then I wasn't part of but I went to so many meetings with him. We would go to meeting we had a meeting with Chuma Azikiwe, it was in the Ikoyi Hotel, from 10 p.m. till 3 a.m. At a point, we were with Barnabas Gemade, he was living at Ikoyi then, he was minister in one of the ministries in Nigeria. We had so many meetings. We go, the man was fantastic. I drive him around, and he takes me like a handbag. I never knew exactly what I was doing. I was a young man, probably around 22 years old.
Okay.
And that's between 1991 and 92. So it was at the point he told me, Alex, are you from where? I said, I'm from Imo State. So I'm going to make a very strong political force in your state. But you see, the military never let that to happen. That was truncated by that annulment, as we said earlier. And that ended there. So coming back again, we had a lot of challenges because if you don't have somebody in Nigeria to propel you to success in politics, you're not going to make it on your own. So the youth are having what we can call a very, very tight hurdle as far as Nigerian politics is concerned. And it will be in the interest of Nigeria. I said earlier what happened in Russia, where Boris Yeltsin had to hand over to Putin, a very young man. When he was handed over, he said, a man with energy and drive. I'm an old man and tired. That was the comment he made, part of the comment he made. So if Nigerians will look at the youth as having the wherewithal, they are strong enough, they have the drive, they have the energy to push policies and make things happen, it will be good for us. Ambode is doing well in Lagos. He's a young man. Fashola was fantastic in Lagos. He's a young man. And those are an example for those. The other young governors who were so great in where they functioned. So those are those people, when you look at what they've done, you can say, okay, I can take a tap from here, I can take a tap from here. So even in my state, people have issues with my governor. Well, I would say a few people, but he's a fantastic governor. He's been doing well. I'm not an APC member for now, but what I saw when I went, he's a young man, what I saw when during the Christmas period I was there, expanding the road and building so massive structures and opening Imo State was fantastic.
Which governor is this?
Rocha Sokorocha has been doing fantastic in Imo State. I don't care what people, these publicists and those who go online and talk all kind of nonsense, because the market they were mentioning, he kind of demolished. If you go to that Douglas Road, there are a bunch of refugees out there all the time. I'm not saying the approach on demolition is fantastic, but what I'm saying is that it was a good drive for a better city. The whole Imo State are looking, the expansion I saw there and the work that has been done already, I don't care what anybody thinks, the guy is fantastic.
Awesome.
After Mbappe, nobody has done what he has done. I'm sorry to say this. So, young governors, and he himself he had mentioned it, that after him, no governor of Imo State should more than 50 years, which means going through your question, that entailing with your question, the youth is what drives innovation, drive what you can call development, and drive changes. So, you know, they should give the youth an opportunity. They should look at the youth. The old men should give way. When you do something for 20, 30 years, 40, are you not tired?
You need some change.
Need some change. Let the youth come with a new drive, the world is changing too. Your kids, the kids of today are no more the kids we know before. The internet, the iPad, the telephone, the whatever have revolutionized the way people think. So those ideas which the youth are imbibing every day should be introduced into the way we do things in Nigeria, and the old men cannot do it. So the bottom line is that the youth are capable, and they are fantastic, and they can do the job better than the old politicians. They should be given an opportunity.
Then how does one now unlock those potentials in the youth and encourage
The way
them?
they unlock them is giving them opportunity to serve. The way they unlock, giving them the right education. The way you unlock them is making them part of the developmental process. When you launch 20, 30 year development plan, who is going to handle it? If I'm here today and make a developmental projection for next 30 years, how old do you think I'm going to be?
Certainly it's going to be.
So it's going to be the youth that will launch that project. I may start it today, but they're going to be the ones to see to its success. So the youth are the leaders of tomorrow, and they should be carried along in every sphere of development. We don't do that in Nigeria, and that is not good. Check the whole political people, most of them.
They're probably greater than 65 or 70.
And the youth and the people you see around them, if you see any youth walking around there, they're handpicked, and they answer back to them. That's what they call the Godfather. So if you give them the opportunity to use their initiatives and do things the way they think is the best way to approach it, they're going to ask you some questions, but they're going to be the one who will drive the train. Then the innovation and changes will be very, very faster and also function better. So the youth are the key to Nigerian development, expansion, and success tomorrow. But they should start thinking along that line.
Okay. Now, tell us, I know this is more or less like $1 billion question that I've been really looking forward to asking you. Are you really looking at running during the next election? Because it seems it's all over you.
That's what they've been saying that. But let me tell you, it's still part of the problem we're talking about Nigeria.
Yes.
Political setting has not made it easy for people like us to come in, you see. And I've been around political circle for a while, but I was really active, want to make that incursion for the first time in the last election. But it was turmoil. You know, people have been asking me, we saw your billboards, we saw your posters, we saw everywhere, and we were excited. What happened? Now, what happened is this. Let me take this opportunity and put the whole record straight. What happened is this. I was for APGA. I was a member of APGA. Okay. I had a meeting with the APGA chairman. I had a meeting with one of my political mentors, too, which I have not mentioned yet. His name is Regan Ofomba. Okay. As a matter of fact, after A.A. Maikori, the father of the Audu Maikori, the next person who made me saw politics the way it is and introduced me deeply, practically, actively into politics was Regan. Regan took me to various meetings and launched me into political, platform. And Regan is the person who ran for APGA governorship election in 2011 election in Abia State. It was APGA candidate. And the popular opinion had it that he won the election. But it's not how it is. It's very hard to remove the incumbent.
Very true.
So we had a meeting, me, Regan, and Maxi Ofu, who was the chairman of APGA. And, I was propelled and encouraged to go to my area, set up structures, and run for that election of 2014-15. And we started working on that. Max Ofu was the authentic APGA chairman at that point because the convention they had in APGA brought him in as chairman. Peter Obi was there, Bianco Ono was there. These are the APGA leaders. But Victor Ume, who was the APGA chairman before then, felt that there's a procedural error that brought Max Ofu there, and therefore he went to court. Then while we were doing that, they created two factions of ABGA, Max Ofu's faction and Victor Ume's faction. So I was, because all my strengths were with Max Ofu faction, as I have what you can call my political, godfather or friend or whatever you can call is there. Okay. And I was with them. Eventually, this case was all over the courts. We are going, there was a high court where Victor Ume won to remove Max Ofu, a fantastic gentleman. Max Ofu is just fantastic. Great guy, very humorous guy. You like him, you should see him. And we went to appeal court, we won. Then Victor Ume went back to Supreme Court and won. So while these things were going through, politics has been on. We're all on doing. But when the Supreme Court came with their verdict and, brought back Victor Ume as the substantive chairman, all of us have to give way. That's the law of the land. So that was why the structure, the party, the billboards and everything, that was towards the election proper. So I couldn't continue because my faction has been removed. So going forward, like you asked, in the next election, are you still going to run? Are you still coming out again? I spent so much money. An election is not easy. True. And of course, I didn't come to America for fundraising. Certainly not. I never come here to ask you to give me money. I want to go and run for election because I use my little resources and efforts to get into that platform and make what I'm going to do. So, and right now, I don't know what it's going to look like going there right now. So what I'm going to do is to get into the system first, go to the grassroots, go to the leaders, and look again deeply and see if I can leap. They say look before you leap. So I see if I can leap. If it's possible for me, I will. If not, I'm still going to,
the passion and the drive is still there.
Well, it's there because I lived in America for years. Remember, I'm part of this system before I even went back to Nigeria to stay. So it's when you see a good system at work,
you want to implement it to
you want to replicate the same thing where you're coming from. It's just a kind of a help. Yes. So when you see a good system work fantastically, you want to do the same thing. When you want to serve, remove your mind from what you're going to get from it. Think about what you're going to give to the people. Like Jeff Eke said, think about what you're going to give to your country, not what your country is going to give to you. Sure. Let it be a selfless thing. My life has been chronicled about help. I was the youngest deputy coordinator of JDPC in Catholic Church of Assumption, Falomo. The people that were in charge before we came in, I was deputy coordinator along with former Secretary General of Nigerian Sports Commission, Dr. William Alexander Boyd. Fantastic man, very great man. He was the boss.
And let us know again, because I know you mentioned in part one about JDPC, what it means.
Yeah.
The public.
JDPC essentially means Justice, Development, and Peace Commission. It was a part of the church, Catholic Church. It was a commission, not just like society in the church, a commission that was set up by the Catholic Church to look up for the less privileged, the orphans, the destitutes, those in prison. We have a prison ministry, the sick, all kind of people.
And they're definitely still in...
The JDPC is very effective. They're very, very effective in Nigeria. I don't know about you, but they're very effective. So we were, as a matter of fact, 2003 election, we produced the monitors that monitor the general election in Nigeria. Awesome. And I was part of it. So, you see, what I'm saying is, I was produced through their job to see human aspect of life, what you can make to change people's life for the better. True. Change their thinking, change their mindset. A little love and cuddle can change the way you think about me.
And bring peace.
And bring peace.
And avoid violence.
Avoid violence. So these are what I was made to see. Being the engine room, because Dr. Boyd gave me the opportunity to design projects, work on those projects, and implement them. I report back to him. He's the coordinator, I'm deputy coordinator, one of the deputy coordinators. We have three. I'm one of them. One lady they call Maureen Ebuna was one of them. So JDPC gave me an idea on how to reach those people, communities, and do something good for them. And it worked fantastically well.
I guess that's a great thing.
We're at a point, we released about 50 inmates from Ikoyi prison who have been standing in there for more than 10 years, awaiting trial. Not even been tried, awaiting trial for 10 years. So that will tell you the kind of where it all started. And you take the passion to the United States and see how the system works here too. Where the law is the law, you have to follow to the end. And that's also propel me the more.
Want to push further.
I want to push further. And until I miss this, during that JDPC days, I was also one of the well, I started politics then. Nigerian project we are part of. That was the secretary for Imo State, police secretary for Imo State. And what that means, Nigerian project is part of the PDP. I'm working for the elected certain individual as president. So I was one of the secretaries there, and we were on the ground. We saw a lot of things happen, and we can help wherever it's necessary.
Okay, so now having looked back in history, particularly, let's say the second term for presidents or governors, have you really looked through any of those for inspiration in addition to your background?
If you say inspiration, it's okay.
Sometimes you could look back.
It's okay.
And,
if you say for learning purposes, to learn something from it, it's okay. You see, our problem is, like I keep saying, nobody will, deny this fact. We are highly corrupt. Okay, that's a fact.
Very true.
Even
I like your honesty.
Yeah, we are highly corrupt in Nigeria. So when people came in to run for an election and they know they have the second opportunity to go for another 4-year term, we normally do 4-year term in Nigeria. After the first 4 years, they will try to impress the people they are working with, and the people and everybody, the stakeholders, and everybody. Once the 4 years is gone and they got re-elected for a second time, they believe that's their own time to get whatever they want to get from the system because they're not coming back again. So that is the area I want to tell people, name is better than fund, money.
Very true. My dad said so before. Mm-hmm.
You should be able to be selfless in service for the good 8 years. If you want to go for it, if you succeed in going for the second time, you should be able to give your people the best. Because what matters most is the legacy you're keeping after you leave. Let me tell you, in Imo State, where I come from today, Sam Mbakwe is highly respected and regarded till tomorrow.
Awesome.
For what he put on the ground, for what he did.
Awesome.
Sam Mbakwe have died many years back, but his name still rings bell every day. So if you know such thing happen, in Yoruba land, Awolowo, they never forgot him. If you have a good, what I can call antecedent, if you have something you have done that will solidify your name, in case if they look for you tomorrow, they don't see you. That is a better gift than money. Don't go and people start talking bad about you. That's not going to help. So what I'm saying is that second term of governors, I will only give an advice. I'm not going to take inspiration because most of them deviate from what's supposed to be what they're supposed to do and start doing other things. I want you to be consistent in your promises, projects, and programs. Whatever you told the people you're going to do for them,
do it.
Be consistent.
Be consistent.
Work very hard. Nobody comes in liked by everybody.
Very true.
So people will hate you, but let the majority of people talk good about you. Be consistent in your program, policies, and plans, and come out leaving a finger, a print they will remember tomorrow. That's very, very important.
I see that greatly in you, and I believe with the passion in you, you'll definitely be very successful in whatever you decide to do.
Well,
beyond the Imo State community, because I know even Nigeria as a whole, there's a lot that I think Nigerians can also get from you and also implement that in their own custom or, trend in politics or whatever it is. And I hope that, if along the line you decide to pursue that.
I thank you for saying that.
I hope
truly,
so.
Joy, I thank you for.
I truly appreciate that because I'm feeling that. So I said, I hope so that along the line you would consider, like you said, you have to go through the grassroots and look before you leap and then see if it's going to be viable for you to contest, or just to bring about change. I believe in change strongly, and I feel as I'm also a voice for the less privileged. So since you have that passion, being a humanitarian as well, and also being a strong stakeholder for the Imo State Congress here in America and also abroad, there's a lot that I believe you can give back to Nigeria beyond, far beyond. So we hope you will still go beyond that, even if you do contest or not.
We'll continue to do the best for the people.
Okay, awesome, great. So now, on Matters Arising, questions have been raised on if collaboration is beneficial for African countries, especially Nigeria and their developmental goals. Now, what's your opinion on that?
Collaboration is beneficial for every country with good intention to succeed. If you look at America, they're part of NATO. They are part of this NAFTA, whatever they call with North American Treaty Organization about, trade, partnership. No nation is an island. And I'm happy Nigeria has been signing bilateral agreement with some countries too. So collaboration solidifies you financially, solidifies you economically, and make you reach out and learn things you don't even know. It was collaboration that gave Malaysia the highest producer of palm oil today. They came to learn from Nigeria. They pick the pieces from Nigeria. Palm oil, palm kernel, they pick it from Nigeria and start learning Today, they produce more than Nigeria. If we're not in good terms with them, we don't give them access to come and take our seats to go and start doing what they're doing over there. Collaboration allows countries to work hand in hand and look at where they, for mutual benefits. When you have competitive advantage, I come and take from there, you come and take from my own, then we collaborate, we succeed, we triumph, we do well. So Nigeria deserves to be doing that, even with the least unnoticed country, even the poorest country. Don't say this one has nothing to offer. Every country has something to offer. Just look deep, think. There's something you can pick up from there that could be beneficial to you. So it is one of the key aspects of success, triumph, collaborate in a good way.
And I believe it also goes beyond country to country. We can also apply that in our personal lives.
Of course.
It's good to be open, embrace other tribes, other religions, and because you just never know who's going to be your brother's keeper, who's going to be there.
Let me tell you, the problem we have in Nigeria today, I said this before. You see IPOB?
Yeah.
They're everywhere, asking for Biafra. Now I tell you, in my lifetime, let me use that word, I've never seen where Igbo people, especially the youth, have this kind of solidarity among themselves on one active goal to achieve it. The reason that can create this consciousness into their life that if you come today or go to Ladipo Market or go to Idumota and talk nonsense about Biafra, the Igbo people trained there will lynch you.
Very true, I've heard that before.
Now, the reason this passion grew so big, so wide, that they will face a man with a machine gun and say, kill me, with bare hand, shoot and kill, is because of when you don't bring the policy of inclusion, when you marginalize them, when your policies are seen clearly detrimental to their well-being. The only thing when you push a man to the floor, you don't have to do is to find a way to rise up. You can't leave him on the floor. Dig him there. So they are reacting to what they see as perceived injustice in the society. And the agitation is legitimate until what is happening in Nigeria is corrected. So the system should look inwardly. I'm saying this because of collaboration you mentioned about, and all those things in our personal lives. Nigeria is divided into so many ethnic groups. People go ahead and carry AK-47 and kill people, and none of them has been arrested or dealt with or nothing. And this is a crime committed. But if somebody steals something on the road, they will rush him or probably lynch him there.
Very true.
And people are seeing this thing happening. And you want them to keep quiet? They are human beings. So what you want to do is to come together. All those things that divide us, let's talk about it. Let's find a way out of it. Let's make it work. You can never keep patching something that you know that is unpatchable. You keep patching it.
You have to go down to the groups.
It's going to work. It's not going to work. We will tell ourselves the truth and function on it. That is where collaboration affects our individual lives, groups, societies, apart from countries. We will collaborate to live together. An Igbo man who was born in Igbo land, grown in Igbo land, cannot speak Hausa. And also someone who was born in the North, grew in the North, cannot speak Igbo. Yet we're living in the same country. So basically, we have to work something out to be able to stay together and function as well and prosper together. No country wants to be divided. Get this, because the bigger you are, the more powerful you are. The more you make so much inquest and succeed. The fragment, when you fragment yourself and divide and secede and say you are this or you are that, you become weaker. But if staying together is costing you a lot, they are killing you, they are maiming you, they are treating you as if you are not even part of the system, the next option for you to say, I don't want this anymore. If that's the way the marriage is going to be, I'm not interested in marriage anymore. So I believe that if it's not working out for you, you let it go. If it's working out for you, you stay there. So the system should tell themselves the truth. Can we function the way we are? Which all of us know the truth, but we're afraid to say it. The way Nigeria is, every single soul in that country know that we are not functioning well. Now, how do you correct it? Is where they made their proposals, but some people don't want to implement those proposals. So what we want to do is to keep telling them, I'll prefer us being together, love each other, work with each other, believe in each other absolutely. But if it's not going to work, let us let it go in a way that could also, because my stand is always going to be confederation. because we have assimilated so much. I know so many Hausas who are married to my sisters, and they all have children. There are know so many of my folks who are married to the Hausas, and Yorubas as well. Yorubas is as if we're all the same now. So it will be very difficult for you to just let go like that. We've come a long way. What I would advise us to do is to go back to strong regions. Even if you want to be within the 6 geopolitical zone, fine. And also function through that platform to build back Nigeria to where it's supposed to be.
Okay. Now, thank you very much for that response. Now, in reference to technology and communication, how is Nigeria in line with the rest of the world?
Technology and communication, but you and you know that we've not gone far on this thing.
I'm just saying.
No, the thing is, we are making inroads into the whole thing, and we are working very hard, especially, through the passion and the adaptability of the youth and the people. If you ask me, is government working so hard to make this work for us, launching satellite in the space, monitoring it, bringing research team, doing something for us? Mm-hmm. I don't know what they are doing. I don't know what the plans are, Ministry of Technology and the rest. I don't know what their plans are, but the youths are so much into this technology and communication thing and so much into it that they will need help from the higher authority to make it easier for them. How can you, like internet, telephone, the cost, having it in your house, is it a luxury? It's not a luxury. We still do pay kobo per pay kobo, this kind of thing. They should liberalize a lot of this and make it cheaper for... The reason communication companies are charging so high in Nigeria is because of fuel, electricity, all those kind of things affect the way they run their mask or whatever they call it. They put gen there, they buy this one, or they put all the costs on the little phone you are using in your house and on internet, all those kind of things. If you make those areas to work better and make it easy for them on the cost of production to be a little lesser, they could be able to extend those price codes to the end users, and everybody will have access to whatever they need.
Yeah, every home.
It still boils down to the same thing we've been talking about.
And it's very important, I think, for every home to
What can you do without internet in the world today?
I mean, I would like to see every home in Nigeria own at least a
what
computer
can you do
and an internet
in today's world
without
internet?
Certainly nothing. To be very effective.
People who set up shops have come to realize that online shops are more lucrative, have more in return than the physical shop you pay bills every day.
Very true. Very, very true.
We have online platform where we sell some of the goods we do. I do business too. And those things, you see that it costs you less. So what can you do without internet? Make it accessible even in schools, computers, all those things for the children in schools to use them. Their level of, the IQ will be high. And they're going to be a better people tomorrow. So what I'm saying is that we're still going there, but with all these wobblings, fightings, Boko Haram, IPOB, Ulicom or Dua, and all those things, it's not going to help us until the people at the top bring all these groups together, we sit and solve Nigerian major problem. How do we function together? Every other thing's potentials, every other thing will just keep fixing itself.
Now tell me, we're going to digress just a little bit from the political sector. Let's touch a little bit about healthcare, okay? Now, is Nigeria really ready for, electronic health records, whereby instead of having the old, previously archives were all like hardcore paperwork, but now processing every health information with a plus of the BVN number, in addition to that, having electronic health records in place for every hospital or medical center, that way they're able to progress better with your care of patients. I think that could be a great avenue, a great sector to function well in Nigeria precisely.
Let me tell you something. The problem with healthcare sector is because most of them are government. The major ones are owned by the government. And the private ones is capital intensive. People, like you mentioned, BVN and banks. Banks were able to implement BVN and run their platform on internet and all electronic because it's where money flows and money comes in. So they make a lot of money every day sitting out there. So private hospitals, I know some of them that the doctors, the medical directors also, in order to make a little bit more money, it has to go for outside jobs. Most of them are employed by teaching hospitals, and they open their own by the side to augment. So if if you have a hospital like Eco Hospital, have online, this is what you're saying, e-health or whatever you call it.
Yes.
They have because it's a hospital that is up there in the class, and they have the money investors. They went on public and the stock exchange, as I made it understand. So all these things function well with them.
But
Even
they're
so-
part of the Nigerian Stock Exchange.
I think they are.
Okay.
Their stock is there, I think so.
Okay.
And you will not believe this. Cancer patients in Nigeria, they're what they call radiotherapy. Radiotherapy, which is what they use the laser to kill the cells on whenever somebody has this, if it's surgery or something like that.
Yes.
They have only, from what I meant to understand, about 7 hospitals in Nigeria have the radiotherapy machine.
Very
And we have millions of cancer patients, and those 7, only 2 are functioning as at the time I know. One in Sokoto, Usman Danfodi or something, and University in Lut. The rest of them are not working. Then the private one, the only one that have the private one that's functioning at that point, Eco Hotel. Now,
Eco Hotel.
how's the functioning one? Because, like I said, they have a lot of money and they are functioning. And, I mean,
It's Eco Hospital.
they have what it takes. They have what it takes to put those things there and function. So people die because radiotherapy is somebody who, after surgery, needed, if there are remnants of cancer cells around,
To burn it,
and laser and take the thing out. So, if you have only 7 and only 2 works, and you have hundreds of thousands of cancer patients waiting for that, and they are scheduled turn by turn.
Each day.
And only 2 functions. What happens to the rest 5? And these are owned by teaching hospitals. I had UNTH, their own is not working, University of Benin, and the rest of them. So then, I don't know about maybe they started working, I don't know. So what I'm saying is, that was sometime last year. What I'm saying is, to have all those things in place in those hospitals to function properly with the EDs, files, record, and all those things to work, you need money. To run the diesel, to put the gen that will be working 24/7. You need internet. You need all those communication equipment. You need all those things, computers and all those things that function with it. Those cost money. And sometimes they don't have the money, not just buying it now, but maintenance
also matters.
Maintenance.
Maintenance.
So those things are what's going to hinder that from attaining those goals. But, as we progress and move forward, maybe, like we keep saying, good management, good leadership can make it work. Lagos works because the governor that was there before.
Which Fashola?
Well, Lut was federal, and there's a lot of money functioning into Lut based on the kind of patient they receive and Lagos, for what Lagos is. So they could be able to put their own working. I mean, somehow, when the funds are there, those things are going to put in place and they're going to function.
Yeah, and same thing
it's all about money. It's all about management. And I keep saying most of the things we talked about revolve around 3 things: power, security, and leadership. 3 things, that's all.
That can bring about the
If you bring those 3 things in, every other thing will function.
in various segments in Nigeria.
Power,
Education, healthcare,
security. These are the 3
tussle points.
tussle point to get everything function properly in Nigeria.
Awesome.
Get the 3 things on. Most of the things you ask me here will fix itself.
Okay.
You have a good leader, you have a power, you have security. Every foreign investor anywhere in the world will come in. Because we're already in democracy. Everybody will be happy to belong. Everybody will just thrive. Peace will be everywhere. You will have oil, you will have other source of income.
And the unemployment rate
Unemployment will go
reduce.
down. So everything just boils down to 3 cardinal points.
Now tell us about, because right now in recent times, what's the true political stand on the stage of things in Nigeria?
Well, the political stand.
Based on your view,
Well, based on my view, right now, I will be very honest with you. There's a lot of uncertainty in Nigeria. Especially on this. The federal government were fighting the Boko Haram when Jonathan was president, strongly. And they were so powerful, excuse me, that the government were at a point felt as if they couldn't contain that menace. But Buhari came, credit to him, it was subsided. They were contained. But IPOB came from somewhere. IPOB became another thing that's causing so much problem in terms of stability. You know, the government look at them as a problem. I look at them honestly as a legitimate agitation. When you, until you correct the ills around, you can be able to solve their problem. Look at what they're asking for. Look at what you're doing that you're not doing well, and be able to bring them into the fold, and things will work well. So, but to the government, it's a very big problem to them. It doesn't help stability. It doesn't help things to flow the way it's supposed to flow. It's a distraction from the program and plans. Another thing, again, is the health of the president. You know, excuse me, it's been on and off, on and off, on and off. And the VP, I don't know the power he had to do some certain things. They say he's acting, but from source, we were made to understand that a lot of things also happen that he cannot be able to take care of because of the way they structured. Normally, when the president is not a VP, should have absolute
power to step in.
To do a lot of things he had to do, but it's as if they were watching him, you know, checkmating him here and there. So it's uncertainty everywhere. And the dynamics is moving to primary election, 2019 election, political, you know, tigers are coming together to plan. So, and with everything, if this president is very healthy and firm and been working the way he's supposed to work all this while, you could say he hold the party strongly to be able to push forward. But since he is not there, and everybody knows he has a health issue, and the health issue is not a small one, and that tells that even his core supporters will not be comfortable aligning with him, because they know that even if we want to do all we can do to make you president, we are not sure if you're going to survive the process. So they want to, I read about Minister of Women Affairs going a little towards to article. As somebody who is a serving minister in your own government, sort of making some comment about somebody who want to come and contest your position. That tells you how people are feeling right now. And it goes down to all the APC structure. Look, in Southwest, the key figure that put the president there is Bola Tinubu. Because if he has not galvanized what he did to make the president to come and to liaise with him, you know, to get where he is, I don't think he could have made it. Tinubu was the key, most important factor that made the president succeed in winning that election. And if you watch for the past couple of years, since this government came in, he has, as if he was sidelined, he's not been talking so much. There are a lot of problems here and there. And that's not a good thing. You know, you need to, such people, such individual is not somebody you just want to ignore. He has a lot of clout.
Okay. So right now, just tell us, then, how can Nigeria improve its state of economy?
Our economy, well, the only way to improve is to bring foreign investors and also implement good policies that fight corruption. There are a lot of corruption in that country. Let me tell you, a whole lot of damn corruption is there. And for people, for government to get exactly what it deserves, things must be done properly. You understand? Mm-hmm. And he tried in corruption fight. He did some good job, you know, but people term those jobs to be selective. You know, you prosecute some certain people because somebody told me that, have I seen any APC member that have been tried by the EFCC since this president came in? And truly, I've not seen. If you have seen anyone, you can tell me.
I certainly don't know much about it. So
you don't know much about it. So that's the term that is selective. But it was actually, but somebody also said, was APC in government? But some people say they were in government in states. What happened to those states? Are they angel states? So it's the dynamics of Nigeria, you know. So if you want to do something, you have to be seen to be doing it right, not just thinking you're doing it right. Other people should be able, what we call in law, a reasonable person should be able to stay one side and say, yes, this person is just in what he's doing. If a reasonable person cannot come out and see that and know that you're doing something, there's come inside it.
So now tell me, do you believe that some Nigerians, or Nigerians per se, in diaspora, either here in America or in London, UK, wherever it is, Europe or something, can also affect change back home, even in as much as they're in diaspora?
No, they could affect change. Look, I'm a member of Nigerian diaspora, although I live in Nigeria now, and I've been a member before I went back to Nigeria. So,
what role do you think they can play to bring about change? How greatly do you think they can affect that change?
We
What
have-
is on ground right
we-
now
we-
in Nigeria?
we
Yes,
have-
they're in diaspora, but how well do you think they can fit in to bring about change?
If the government give them the opportunity to bring down what they have, give them what you can call a smooth platform,
They still have a
soft
voice?
landing. That's what I'm saying. They have a voice. They have a voice. As a matter of fact, the Nigerian diaspora, the chairman in the United States is a friend of mine, Engineer Dwisi George. I spoke with him a couple of months back, or weeks back. So, if the government can give them the platform and seek their own contribution in policies and plans, we have fantastic individuals in this all over the world
Yes.
who can come and change that country overnight.
Intellects.
Overnight. What you need to do is to give them genuine opportunity to bring what they have home. Let me tell you, Obasanjo did it. Okonjo-Iweala was from here, or in diaspora. He came in not just stabilizing the economic aspect of Nigeria, she also pioneers the writing off Nigerian debt with IMF and Paris Club. So that was exactly example of what they can do. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
The other one, Ezekwesili, was what I was trying to remember. Ezekwesili, Mrs. Ezekwesili, was in due process at the point, and she was fantastic there. Due process actually means when you are awarded a contract from, let's say, Ministry of Health in Nigeria, you will have, when you execute the contract, or before you execute the contract, they will have to make sure that you went through the due process and the job you were awarded, the amount they were giving you from that ministry, tally what it's supposed to be when you go to Ministry of Finance to collect the money. There should be, before people can be awarded a contract in Nigeria, I will not be executed and they collect their money.
Very true.
So now, then when they were there, they were making sure that every LP or whatever, tender, whatever you make, any contract awarded must go through the due process to make sure there was no here, maneuver here, with intention to steal, and before the fund is paid to you. Okay. So the diasporans are able, and will continue to be able, to function better if given the opportunity. The president has a special advisor on diaspora called Honorable Abike Dabiri. She talks to them, but I would like her to function in a way that harness those diasporans. I don't know if they're going to let her, but she has a limit to what she can do. Harness them, what the potential they have, and make recommendation to the government. These people can function here better. They can function here better. The problem is that sometimes Nigerians look at them as a threat. But if you have genuine intention to make your country work well, function well, you need the capable hands to make it work. If you don't have them there, you continue to go back to status quo. It's not going to function well.
Okay, so now we still do have some Nigerians that are abroad in diaspora that are still folding their arms and are letting things just go down the drain in Nigeria without even giving any voice, no effort. It's like they really care less. They don't even have a problem. They don't even have a thought of even wanting to return back home because they feel as though nothing's working, I mean, based on, hearsay and what you hear, feedbacks and what you're seeing on television and everything else. Now, what important message would you really communicate across to Nigerians in diaspora, those abroad, to encourage them to decide to want to come back home, to extend their love and what they have to benefit Nigeria towards building that nation?
It takes courage based on what we see on the ground. Since you live in America, have you seen your light go off before?
Certainly not.
How many times do you get stuck and go slow? No, that's
I mean, I do understand what you're saying.
So it takes courage. How is your criminal justice working in Nigeria?
The criminal justice system
do you see the difference between here and over there?
Certainly.
So, and there's also a lot of godfathers in Nigeria. Do you have godfather in the United States?
Certainly not, and no one is above the law.
So it takes courage to go down there. What makes them think, I don't want to go there, is frustration. Frustration. When you see things, do you know in Nigeria 1 + 1 could be anything between 25 and 31? When here 1 + 1 is 1. So you see, it depends on how you understand the system, how the system works. It takes a lot of courage. We are surviving there by His grace. It takes a lot of courage. That is why they get so frustrated. I don't want to hear anything about that country. But that's not the right way to go. Like I told somebody, if you want to change somebody from bad behavior, you will not just go to that person and say, stop what you're doing now, else I kill. Or you see somebody who's on drugs, cocaine or whatever it is, you see their group, you go there and say, all of you stop taking these drugs. Immediately, they will lynch you. If you want to change them, pretend to be one of them. And get inside them. And gradually start turning their psyche away from that thing they are doing that is not right. Gradually, get inside. That's psychological. If you want to change Nigeria, get inside Nigeria. Relax. Don't puff off. Don't show them you're from America. You want to do this. You know more than everybody.
Or from Europe or
you
something.
You want to know more than everybody. Relax. Mix with them. Think the way they think for a while. And start also letting them know the better approach to get things done. Gradually, if you can save few, I'm not saying you're going to save everybody. Gradually, the next person will save few.
What else will turn around?
Gradually, things will start turning around.
It's a ripple effect.
The ripple effect, keep coming back normal. So that is the best approach. Staying here and say, I don't want to go there. They should go to hell. The bad boys, or those I think you assume they are
They will still be there.
they're doing what you're doing. They're not going to stop. Somebody who has a good mindset with good, intent will come over there and turn their psyche around, and they will know the difference between what they're doing now. After all, how long do we have to live in this world?
Very true. Not much.
How long? Where are you going to go with the money? Even if you go and build a skyscraper anywhere, when you die, you go to the ground. Where are you going to, with the money, who's going to eat it? The money you stack up everywhere, are you sure your children going to even handle it properly?
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, the little time we have over here, let's do things properly, do it well, and leave the rest to go.
So what other encouragement would you like to put across to them?
What I want to tell them is, please don't get, discouraged by whatever you see happening over there, whether it's bad government, whether it's crime, whether it's security, whether it's this, whatever it is. Your knowledge here in the United States will go a long way to transform what you term to be negative aspects of our lives in Nigeria, or in Africa in general. So if you bring what you have over here that is good, and impact it on people over there, and they learn that this is good, they can imbibe it and start changing their lives. So don't get discouraged, don't get angry, don't just give up. Believe it will work. And honestly speaking, it will work. I've been living in Nigeria for years now, and I'm surviving there. So I believe you can survive as well.
Okay, awesome. And actually, we're rounding up this episode again from recording live from here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm here in the studios with Honorable Alex Obi Oswuola, international publicist. We have we've talked in depth about the crisis, the state of affairs in Nigeria, touching various areas, and I believe you, the audience, have been able to embed in this interview and be able to take back and also reflect back. Now, if you do have any questions or concerns, and if you do have let's say you decide you want to contact Honorable Alex Obi, his contact information is on your screens, scrolling below. His Gmail account, you could go ahead and send him an email. Write him. Of course, he's an international publicist, so there's a lot of articles. If you want to, comment on those or have a one-on-one with him, you could go ahead, contact him. Your information is available on the screen so that way you're able to communicate further based on his knowledge, wisdom, and on just the state of affairs in Nigeria. And probably your comments or your questions can also bring a tremendous impact for Nigeria through him. But once again, I would really want to say thank you so very much for joining us today on Real Talk with Joy. I am your host, Joy Mbong, and we really appreciate you, our able, best audience, and just keep tuning in to Real Talk with Joy. We're dealing with real issues, real life, real people, and real solutions are ahead of you. God bless you, and thank you very much.